How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Crushops. Welcome to this Dark World deck profile. Dark Worlds are a deck that, as you might have heard, are getting a new structure deck this December. I wanted to see what I could make with only 3 copies of said structure deck, at least the OCG version. We don't know exactly what we're going to get in the TCG, but I don't think it's going to be too different from what we have right here. So let's get right into it. I'll try and explain a little bit of the ratios, a little bit of the playstyle of the deck, and after this, I'll even show you a very interesting matchup I had with Sky Strikers in the OCG format. First off, 3 copies of Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World. You're barely even going to summon this. This is usually going to be your floater, or the thing your floater floats into. Is going to be a way to get Dark Worlds into hand so you can discard them again. So this is pretty good also, but the main purpose of this monster is to be used as fusion material for the summon of Overlord of Dark World, which we're going to take a look at later. Yes, Dark Worlds have gotten a fusion monster. You've heard all about it. It's all over YouTube. Then 3 copies of Rainbow Supreme Overlord of Dark World. Not to be confused with Rainbow Overlord of Dark World, its weaker counterpart. This guy is leagues ahead, being able to add whatever you need to hand and then just discard it immediately. It's higher attack than Grapha, so it's just a big beater. Every Dark World actually is a big beater, especially under the field spell, because you just summon big beaters, you flip skill drain and you go on. None of the effects activate in field anyway. Save for a couple, like the fusion monster, but for the most part, you just make a big monster, you flip skill drain, you're good to go. 3 Genta, Gateman of Dark World. This is another new card that was introduced in the structure deck. I believe genuinely this is what Dark World needed to be competent. Competitive, I don't know. I think we'll have to see about that. I don't think it's going to be a rogue deck, but it's going to be maybe like tier 2 or something. I think it's going to be pretty good. But Genta is the consistency piece that Dark World needed oh so badly to be able to start plays. Other than Dangers, of course, but Dangers have a Russian roulette-like effect, which I'm not a big fan of. So being able to guaranteed pitch 1, add field spell, and then just activate the field spell immediately to banish Genta, draw 1, and then Genta comes back when it's banished. I think this is pretty interesting because it gives you a body on board to return to hand and then summon your Grapha or your Overlord as well. Then we run 3 copies of Snow, Unlight of Dark World. Snow is another interesting one. It's not introduced in the structure deck, but it searches your mainly your fusion spell is what you're gonna search with this, because you're gonna search Gates with Genta, and then your fusion spell with this, or your puppet or your library. But the fusion spell is usually what I find myself searching with this, if not a Ceruli or a Silva to do the infamous Ceruli Silva combo. Speaking of Ceruli and Silva, here we have 3 copies of Silva. Silva has the interesting effect where if it's discarded, it can be special summoned from the grave, but if it's discarded by an opponent's effect, it special summons from the grave and your opponent has to return 2 cards from their hand into the deck. So just basically ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, and it's not discarding them, so they don't get resources in the grave, they go back into the deck where, unless they search them again, they cannot be accessed, realistically speaking at least. And then we run double Ceruli. I find Ceruli to be run at 1 quite often. I don't like it at 1. I think being able to have a Ceruli and then have another Ceruli later on in the duel, if you can drag the duel enough, is way better than just having the 1 Ceruli and ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hands just once. And it's not only Silva that you're going to discard with Ceruli. With Ceruli, you're going to discard your Rainbow, you're going to discard your Snow as well. So Ceruli is basically the helper that you need to get your bonus effects going, and not just the basic effects of the Dark World monsters. 3 copies of Dark World Library. Just discard. That's it, it's just discard. And then if a card is discarded by effect, you draw 2. So it just helps you go neutral in card advantage. It helps you discard to get you started. It's a very good Snow target, but I don't think it's as good as the fusion spell that we're going to be looking at right here. Dark World Accession. Accession allows you to banish or discard monsters to special summon the Dark World Fusion monster. Being able to discard specifically means that even after the summon of the fusion monster, your deck is still going to be going on. So you're usually not gonna end on the fusion monster and call it a day. Because you discarded, you're gonna be able to activate a couple more effects in order to keep advancing the duel, and not just, oh, I made this and now I pass. So it allows you to keep going even after you fusion summon, which is something very interesting because almost none of the Dark World effects are once per turn. Then 3, the Gates of Dark World. The Gates is the most important card in the deck. You can banish one from grave, discard a fiend, draw one. Very simple. Also, it makes your stats higher, so under skill drain, this card is amazing. Triple Dark World Puppet. Being able to just banish 3 from grave is a good effect. This is akin to, I think it was called Nail Shadal Ariel, if I'm not mistaken. And then it also helps you recur your banished targets, your banished fusion materials that you banished through Accession, so that's also good. 1 copy of Card Destruction, because, you know, discard your entire hand. You just draw 5 Dark Worlds, discard all of them. It's not bad at all. Triple Skill Drain. Yes, I main deck Skill Drain. Yes, I believe this deck needs to main deck Skill Drain. Is Skill Drain a fair card? I don't know. VFD got banned because it basically was a walking Skill Drain. But I think without Skill Drain, this deck leaves a lot to be desired, because if you cannot stop your opponent, we're talking about the structure deck specifically, because there are ways to stop your opponent. You can play hand traps. They're not very good in Dark Worlds, but you could theoretically make them work to stall your opponent. Without Skill Drain, this deck doesn't perform as well as it would if Skill Drain was in the main deck. That's why I main deck it. You just, as I said, if you can't combo off, you make a big beater, you wait for your opponent to summon something, you flip Skill Drain, and you're done. Then, Deck Devastation Virus. You need to tribute for it, but it gets rid of your opponent's resources sometimes. Like, maybe they have important cards in their hand, you know, something like Sprite, something like Strikers. I think Strikers have 1500 attack, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. I have to recheck on that. I haven't played against Strikers in a while. But Deck Devastation, basically get rid of your opponent's hands. Nowadays, starters aren't always small, but some starters are pretty small attack-wise, so you can just rip those out of your opponent's hand. 1 Dark World Brainwashing. It's a worse fusion monster effect, basically. And then 3 copies of Dark World Punishment, the new counter trap, which basically says when a monster is summoned, you pitch a Dark World, you negate the summon, and then it gives you an extra layer of protection, because when a Dark World will be destroyed, you can banish this card from grave instead. Then for the extra deck, Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World, 3 copies of it. This is the only extra deck card that comes in this deck. I wanted to read this guy for you because he is very interesting. He is quite peculiar. I love the artwork, by the way. I love the fact that he has legs poking out of his chest. That's very extra. Or is he supposed to be some sort of centaur Dark World? I don't know. Anyway, Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World, and a Dark Monster. When your opponent activates a normal spell, trap card, or monster effect, quick effect, you can make that effect become your opponent discards 1 card. You can only use this effect once per turn, etc, etc. And then if it leaves the field by your opponent, you can special summon a Grapha that's banished or in your graveyard. So the first effect, okay, the second effect, it floats, whatever, big deal. But the first effect is interesting because it makes your opponent make you discard a card, which activates the second effects of all of these. Now, granted, we aren't running a lot of monsters, but being able to just activate the Silva during your opponent's turn, and they might have 2 very important cards in hand, maybe that's all they have. You chain Overlord, discard Silva, they have to get rid of those 2 cards. And unless they search them, which with no cards in hand is hard, they will have to just pass. And then you can just flip Skill Drain and keep beating them down with a 3200 beat stick, and if it's under field spell, it's a 3500 beat stick. So that's it for the extra deck as well. Now, into the side deck, Token Collector, Dynamiscus, the Danger package, which includes 3 Mothman and 1 Tsuchinoko. These are the only Danger reprints in the structure deck. Drag Down into the Grave is interesting, but because your opponent is picking what to discard, I don't think it's good enough. However, it's niche enough to where in some situations it's good. And then Dark World Dealings. I don't always like Dealings because it gives your opponent card advantage. Well, no, your opponent goes... Yeah, it gives your opponent card advantage because you go -1 with this. And, yeah, I mean, it fixes your hand, I suppose, but you do need to get rid of a card from your hand. So you go from 5 to 4. I think Allure is better. One of the first upgrades that I would make to this deck is either Allure of Darkness or Akashic Magician in the extra deck. Luckily, I have a copy of Akashic Magician. But after this, I think it's now time that you see what this deck can do when faced against something like Sky Strikers. So let's get into that as well. So here we have the matchup with Sky Strikers. We don't start off super strong, but we do have our Snow in hand. They start off with the Max C and then pass. We immediately set 1, go for card destruction, activate our Snow to search our Accession, the other copies of which we did discard. And then we use our Accession, we discard 2 Dark Worlds. We add the Silva to hand through Rainbow's effect, and then Accession is going to discard the Silva, which is going to return. We just set 3, we return the Silva, and this is exactly what I meant. So, yeah, they try to take our Rainbow, but we chain Deck Devastation. We don't want them to take our Rainbow. And we discard Silva with our monster to make them rip 2 cards out of hand. Yeah, they can draw. They do manage to, sadly, Widow Anchor one of our fusion monsters. But in the end, we do win this duel, so... They crash, but we float into our Grapha. And then they go on with their Sky Striker shenanigans. Luckily, no Mystic Mine in this one. But they can't really do much, so they just... I think they set Solemn there and passed. We set the Skill Drain to save it for later, and we start beating. This deck is very good at just beating. We go for Rainbow again, they negate it. Then we go for our Accession. And we redo everything from the top. Chain another Deck Devastation. I don't know why I did that actually. I don't think Deck Devastation was the correct play here. I think I misclicked. But we see them going to their Sky Strikers, and we just flip Skill Drain to shut their entire deck down. They can't really do much. No cards in hand to remove. Unless they top deck a Twin Twisters or whatever. But they discarded an initial Twin Twisters when we activated card destruction. And now, simple as that, we just start beating. That's what we're good at. We discard the Grapha to... Yeah, they float into a Ray, but we just make short work of that because they were low anyway. Anyway guys, that was it for the 3 structured deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't wait to get my hands on this. I think this is going to be a very big hit at locals. Maybe not as good reprint-wise as Alba Strike or Legend of the Crystal Beasts, but still a very good deck archetype-wise. I'm sure that with a couple of upgrades, with a couple of dangers, the Allures, extra deck monsters, Dugaris, rank 8s, Ciphers, etc., I think this is going to be a pretty okay deck to compete at locals. Maybe it's not going to be top tier meta, tier 0, infinite loop, Yatagarasu, but I genuinely believe this deck stands a good chance against the current way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played. Maybe not competitively, but as I said, it's a very fun deck. It's gonna be very good at locals. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more content like this, or an upgraded version of this very deck, or if you would like to see an unboxing of this deck in real life once it releases in the TCG, make sure you like and subscribe, keep updated with my channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host for tonight, Cross Shops. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see all you guys next time.